F1 heads to Singapore this weekend as they finished up the European tour of this season, and we're really coming down to the home stretch of this 2023 season. We're coming off of an Italian Grand Prix, which we saw records broken. Max Verstappen breaks Sebastian Vettel's 9 consecutive win record with a new record of 10. The only question remaining for this season is how far can it go? Welcome in, guys. I'm Dakota, and welcome into my Singapore Grand Prix race weekend predictions. We're going to make predictions for biggest positive surprise, biggest disappointment, our qualifying top 3, our race podium predictions, as well as, of course, our Haas predictions of the race weekend. And if you want to get involved, I'd like to give my community an opportunity to get involved as well and make their own predictions and include them here. So after the end of each segment, we're going to include my community's predictions as well. We're going to start off right now with biggest positive surprise. But first, go ahead, hit that subscribe button down below if you enjoy F1 content, whether gaming or real life. We do it both here, and we'd love to have you. Also, let me know in the comment section below what your predictions are for the weekend along with us. But first, let's go ahead and jump into our first prediction. Let's go ahead and jump into our first prediction. We have our prediction for biggest positive surprise, and the choice that I've made for my biggest positive surprise is someone I think who is going to absolutely show out due to what's kind of going on in the background. In the news that's come out this week, I think has led me to believe that Zhou Guanyu is going to come out and put in an absolutely banging weekend. There's been talks about whether or not his race seat might be up. There might be issues, who might be replacing him. But then as the week has gone on, we've heard that there might be some closer connections and potentially getting a new contract signs. And so I think Zhou Guanyu is going to come out extra focused to put on an absolute show for Alfa Romeo and try and secure a race seat going forward. So Zhou Guanyu, you are my choice for biggest positive surprise this weekend. Don't let me down. And as for my community, they have gone for a couple of different options. We have a choice for Alpine. Alpine obviously coming off of a very tough weekend, we'll call it, in Italy, where we saw kind of nothing come out of Alpine, obviously down on power and well beyond the pace. So they think they're going to bounce back positively, and Alpine is going to perform pretty well. And the other one we're going to expound upon a little later, but they have predicted Haas points, which would absolutely be the biggest positive surprise of the weekend for me and us at least. But we'll touch on that more. These are the predictions that we need to see. All right, rolling on into the next one, we have our prediction for biggest disappointment going into Singapore. And we've heard their name called once already, and we're going to cut right to the chase. I, for whatever reason, feel like the vibes around Alpine right now are at an all-time low. They've had a very tumultuous season so far, culminating, I think, last week into an absolute disaster of a weekend in Italy. And I just feel like the bad vibes and the bad luck might just roll over again into the next weekend. And while I'm sure they're going to be looking forward to resetting, I have a weird feeling that Alpine is just going to underperform once again. So I'm sorry, but Alpine, you're my choice for my biggest disappointment. And as for my community, they have gone for a couple of M teams. We have a choice of McLaren and a choice of Mercedes. They basically think that both teams have been performing either very well in McLaren's case or very down in Mercedes' case, and they think they might just kind of continue that way. McLaren's been kind of on a downward trajectory the last few weeks, and Mercedes also has been a little bit off the pace as well. So they think that also is going to continue, and those are their choices for biggest disappointment. All right, moving right into the Saturday action, qualifying top 3. And we're going to go ahead and start from P3 as we have been here recently, mainly just because it feels like there's no surprise by the time we get to P1. But let's go ahead and start. My P3 pick for qualifying is Lewis Hamilton. And while some people in my community might think Mercedes might come into Singapore and be a little down, I think that they're going to be extra focused, seeing this as an opportunity to score some really, really good points in their fight for P2 in the constructors. And so I think Lewis is going to come out and put in an absolute fantastic and quality lap, and he'll finish P3 in qualifying around Singapore. And then for P2, my choice is obviously going to be Max Verstappen. Yes, you heard that right. Max Verstappen not taking pole for the second race weekend in the row. We saw Carlos Sainz was able to take him down in Monza, and I think that Max is going to be usurped once again the following race weekend by none other than my choice for pole position, Sergio Perez. Checo took pole position a year ago at the same circuit, and I think Checo is due for a weekend from start to finish where we just see him come out and just do what he does in a car that should honestly be performing very, very well on the grid. So Checo, don't let me down. I'm putting a lot of faith in you here. I'm throwing away a fairly easy, reliable point, and I believe in you. So go ahead, prove me correct, take pole position, because you are my choice. And then as for my community, we'll just kind of roll through these very quickly just because, there's a lot of options here. For their choice for pole position, we have a choice of Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. So once again, another believer in Checo this weekend. And then for P2, we have the inverse. We have then a Perez and Verstappen. And then P3 is where they really differ, where it's Hamilton and Leclerc. So a bit of people think, Red Bull's going to dominate. Probably, very rightfully so. We'll have to see what happens. All right, moving right along. The one that we all love to see and the ones we show up every Sunday to watch, the podium predictions. And I'm just going to jump straight into it. Max is winning the race. This is actually something that until someone proves me wrong on this one, he's won 10 races in a row. And while he may not take pole in my predictions, he's definitely going to be taking the race win in my predictions. Now, if Sergio can put together a fantastic weekend from start to finish, then maybe he'll be able to challenge for P1. But I've been saying it for weeks. But until someone can usurp Max in a race, I can't not predict him to take the race win. So for P2, I've predicted Lewis Hamilton. I think Lewis is going to come out extra focused, and while he may not necessarily be on Max's pace, I think he's going to be on a very good pace. And this is partially to do because I predicted Sergio Perez to take third, but I think this is going to come down to Red Bull inherently just preferring and give the preferable strategies to Max. We saw it in the last couple of weekends in a row where they've given the preferred strategy to Max, and it just always seems to work out that way. And so I think they're going to see something similar. I think Red Bull's going to try and push this record as long as possible. And so I think Lewis is going to be able to take advantage of that and finish P2, with Checo inevitably coming P3, which honestly would be a disappointing result. Starting at the front and finishing on the podium, I think is the bare minimum for Checo. And so I think we can see it happen. And then as for my community, once again, we'll run through this. They have both predicted a Max Verstappen win. In P2, we have a split decision of a Lewis Hamilton and a Sergio Perez. And then for P3, we have a choice of Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc. So they continue to think that Max is going to continue his dominance and extend his record now to 11. But we'll have to wait and see who ends up finishing in second for them. But it's going to be an exciting one. Anyway, I always do love watching Singapore. It's fascinating to see. And it's one of the interesting street circuits on the calendar. So last but not least, we have our Haas predictions of the race weekend. As a Haas fan, I'd love to include this one as well. Although this season, there hasn't been a whole lot of good, positive things to predict for them. And so this weekend is no less. I don't think Singapore is going to suit the car very well. It's going to be very downforce and tire dependent. And the Haas car is not so good on the tires, putting it lightly. And while they are bringing upgrades, supposedly, it feels like anytime they brought upgrades this year, we haven't seen a whole lot really happen. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. I hope they prove me wrong, but my predictions are a one car into Q2, ergo a Q1 elimination, and both cars finish the race. I'm giving myself a little bit of a positive note here. Both cars finish the race. We bring it home. Both cars finish. We're chilling. And then as for my community, we also have a prediction of one car into Q2 from one and no points finish. And as we mentioned at the top, and biggest positive surprise, one of my community members believes that Haas is going to score points this weekend. They predicted specifically a P9 finish, and if that happens, I would be over the moon. I think it might take a little bit of craziness, but we've seen some craziness before in Singapore, and I'm hoping maybe we can take advantage of it again. I'm down for it. I would love to see it. It would be the highlight of the weekend for sure. But there you go, guys. That's our Haas predictions for the Singapore Grand Prix weekend. Guys, that wraps up our predictions for the Singapore Grand Prix. But what do you think is going to happen? Let me know down in the comments below. Hit subscribe so you don't miss any uploads. I do these predictions videos before the weekend. I do a recap video afterwards, and we play some F1 video games in between. But that'll do it for me here in this one. I hope you all enjoyed the Singapore Grand Prix weekend. Maybe something exciting will happen, but only time will tell. But until then, until the race is over, I'll see you guys in the next one.